Trout Powerbait has been around for decades and generations, and whether you're a beginning angler or a seasoned angler that fishes powerbait, there's always something new to learn. So today, we're going to go through the top 10 trout fishing powerbait tips to help you catch more trout. What is up, Outdoor Mavericks? Welcome back to the channel and the latest trout fishing tips video on the channel, where today it's all dedicated to powerbait. Now, whether you hate powerbait or whether you love powerbait, it's one of the easiest ways to get new people and new anglers into the fishing and into the outdoors. And it was the way that I was introduced into trout fishing when I was just 4 years old. So in today's video, we're going to focus in on 10 tips using trout powerbait that you can utilize out on the water and help you catch more trout. So starting with tip number 10 is to just keep it simple, and that goes from the setup to the rigging to the bait color choice. As trout fishing anglers, we can sometimes overanalyze and overthink the water, the situation, the conditions to figure out which power bait's the best to use, and trying some fancy different techniques that may not be as good as the tried and true plunking trout fishing setup. And when it comes to trout power bait, it's one of the easiest setups and easiest way to go fishing. So when it comes down to it, just keep it simple with a plunking setup, having a size 12 hook at the end, and then adding some bait. Get that cast out. You don't have to make it over complicated. And of course, when you keep it simple, you're going to get glitter all over your hands, and that could get you in trouble when you get home. Don't ask me how I know. The tip number 9 has to do with powerbait color, and that is to be mindful of the colors that you choose. Now, every day out fishing, it could be different conditions, whether it's low light, cloudy, super sunny, it could be cold, it could be warm, it could be windy. The water conditions could be all over the place. It could be grassy, it could be muddy, the water could be very off color, the fish could be out deeper, the fish could be shallow. And this is where you want to be super mindful of the color of bait that you're going to use based off the conditions of what you're seeing. But it's also great in packed areas when you're stock trout fishing. If you're seeing other anglers having success on specific colors, go switch to those colors and use those ones as well. And because conditions change out on the water so much, be very mindful of your color presentation, and that could lead to a day of 0 bites and a day with a lot of bites. Now, tip number 8 is to use scent to your advantage. Now, the Trout Powerbait formula is a specific formula targeting trout and targeting stock trout. But in the Trout Powerbait line, you also have straight Corn Powerbait in yellow. You have a lot of garlic scents. You have scents such as salmon egg. You have aniseed. You have nymph colored. You have garlic and warm out of the tequila series. You have all kinds of different options available that you can use. So be very cognizant when you're going out on the water, depending on the water conditions, the water temperature. There might be a specific scent that you might be able to utilize the best to get the best fire bite when you're out there. If you have no idea where to start, or you're fishing a new body of water, garlic and corn and salmon egg are the 3 scent combinations that I would go to first if you're fishing a new body of water. So give those 3 colors a try and see how you do. Now, tip number 7 is to pack it tight. And what I mean by that is to pack the bait onto the hook super tight. You don't want the powerbait dough loose on the hook. You want to get the dough onto the hook, and you want to cover the entire hook because you don't want it exposed, but you want to pack your powerbait in there nice and tight so it's going to fit tight to the hook. And when that fish grabs that bait, they're going to get hooked into the side of the mouth, the upper part of the mouth, very, very easily. A lot of times I'll see anglers just kind of mold the bait around the hook, and then they're like, all right, I'm good. And they'll either lose it when they're casting, it'll hit the water and it'll fly off. That's because the power bait is not on the hook tight enough and it's way too loose. So what you really want to do is take a few extra moments, pack that bait onto the hook. A, it's going to stay on there better, and B, it's going to improve your hookup ratio a lot, especially in the summertime. Now, tip number 6 is to use single hooks all the time. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use treble hooks, and I'm not an anti-treble hook angler. I just like single hooks better because 1, I think I get better hookups, and 2, if I'm not keeping the trout, they're easier to release them and get the hook out with a little pair of pliers. Now, if you're dead set on keeping the trout, definitely you can go with the treble hook, but over the years, I've just found more success and a better hookup ratio when I have the single hook versus versus the treble hook for some odd reason. Plus with the treble hook, if you're reeling it in, you're going to get caught up in the weeds and the grass, maybe on stumps if there's coverage in the water. So if you want to be cognizant and not lose gear, go with the single hook versus the treble hook. Now, tip number 5 also has to do with bait color, and that is that natural can absolutely slay them. And in the power bait line, you have a lot of natural colors that you can utilize to your advantage. A couple specific ones being green pumpkin and hatchery pellet brown are two of my favorites that are very natural and that you can utilize on all of the bodies of water that you fish. And for stock trout and trout in general, you don't have to go bright all the time. There is a great opportunity to use more natural colors in more clear water situations, in more summertime fishing that are going to allow you to get a better hookup ratio because the trout think it's a more natural presentation, it's more natural food in the water, and you're going to get a lot more strikes and bites potentially than say some of the brighter colors that are out there. And yes, even something like natural colored cheese scented flavored power bait, that's a natural one and you could absolutely utilize it. But obviously don't utilize that cheese power bait on your ham and cheese sandwich for lunch like my brother. Now, tip number 4 is to make your own power bait combos. Now, when you get a jar of power bait, it's usually one color, maybe a 2 color. There's now triple swirl colors of power bait, but there's nothing stopping you as an angler from taking the power bait from one jar and another jar, taking a little bit out of each jar and combining them into your bait ball that you're going to present to the trout. This is something that I think a lot of anglers underutilize as something that they could do to enhance the bite. Say you have something more of a peach salmon egg and something more of a chartreuse garlic, combine those two together, that's an absolute banger fire summer trout fishing power bait combo that you can utilize to absolutely slay the summer trout. So as you're digging through the tackle box and seeing what power baits you have, don't be afraid to combine 2 different colors onto one bait and onto your hook, because you might find the fire bait combination that's going to outfish everybody on the lake, and the only thing you have to do is keep it very secret. Now, tip number 3 is size of bait matters. And yes, size does matter. And especially when power bait, the size of your bait absolutely matters, because if you have too little of power bait and you're plunking it, it's not going to float up off the bottom far enough for the trout to see it and strike the bait. Now, if you have too big of a piece of power bait, a lot of times the trout will just suck that bait right off the hook. You'll actually have a reduction in your hookups because that bait is so big that they can literally strip the bait off the hook. Now, what you really want is something the size of about your pinky nail, something that's very compact, very tight in there that you can get out and present it to the trout. That's still going to float off the bottom because there's enough power bait there, but not too much where they're going to try to grab it and you're going to have a reduction in the number of hookups that you have. So as you're putting your bait on your hook, be very cautious and very cognizant of how much you're putting on there and also what time of the year that it is, because in the winter time you want it to be a little bit smaller, and in the summertime you want that bait a little bit bigger because they'll chomp and go after it. So at the end of the day, power bait size definitely matters. Now, tip number 2 relates to a power bait that I always have to carry with me no matter what time of the year, no matter what body of water that I'm on. And tip number 2 is to always carry corn power bait. With so many hatcheries feeding the trout a corn-based, cornmeal-like pellet for the food to get them to grow bigger, it only makes sense that the corn power bait will absolutely crush it and be fire bait on the water. And that's why no matter what type of situation, no matter what body of water, no matter where I'm fishing, I always have corn power bait in my tackle box, in my pocket of my hoodie. I have multiple jars with me all the time, and so should you. Corn absolutely kills all times of the year. Well, now that we've gone through tips 2 through 10, what's tip number 1? Well, that is to just have fun. Trout powerbait fishing is all about having fun, taking somebody new fishing, whether it's your kid, your neighbor's kid, a friend, maybe somebody who's never fished before. Take somebody new, have fun trout fishing. Trout fishing with powerbait is all about having fun. So make sure when you get out on the water and you get that powerbait on your hook, you cast it out and then you just have a blast. Have some fun with it. Maybe if you're reeling a couple fish, that's the icing on the cake, but have fun, fun and have fun powerbait fishing. And there you guys have it, the top 10 trout powerbait trout fishing tips. Hope you guys got some great information from today's video, and if you did, hit the thumbs up on that video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button down below, and as always, you guys, the outdoors is a gift, share it with others. I think I still have powerbait on my fingers from earlier today. I think that's like salmon egg, garlic, and corn. Ugh, I need to like wash my hands again. Gross.